Hey everybody, I'm Philip, and today we're going to talk about Welcome to Derry, Season 1, Episode 7. Last week's episode was a bit controversial for some people. I think there should be a school and class taught opinions are not facts. There is no right or wrong. But I did have a kindred spirit. I frequent a message board, not for this show, just in general. And on it, somebody said, yeah, episode 6 was shit. 90% of that episode could have been cut and nothing was lost. I agree about 90% with that. I see where we were going now, but I do think it was very much a filler episode and not a complete nothing burger, but I still maintain that it felt like padding. You could have done more with the plot, I think. But I'm in the minority there, and that's fine. But again, it's all opinion. There is no right or wrong, which I think, you know, is common sense. But let's go on to episode 7. Was it better than episode 6? Yes, for 90% of it. I have some issues with episode 7, but overall, this was really good. Really good. And very powerful. As if you've seen it, obviously you know what happened. Rich died. And I guess it's a good thing I'm not doing reactions to this because I was getting a little teary eyed there. That was unexpected, and not only unexpected, it was a moment you're thinking, he's gonna make it out. He's gonna somehow figure it out. Like they're gonna, like when they went in after the fire and they had gotten Marge out of the trunk. At first, you couldn't. Like we later saw him, he was sitting on the other side of it. But when they first went in, you really couldn't see anything. So I was like, he figured something. He found a way out. But no, he didn't. And pretty shocking that they killed off a character like that. It I have a few different thoughts on it. Like one, I mentioned episodes ago that he felt like the most expendable character, and I guess in the end he was, because we didn't really get much of a backstory with him. I said that you could remove him from the plot completely, and not a lot changes. Up until now, that remained true. And then something else that occurred to me was it's interesting that the first person in the new Losers Club that died was not at the hands of Pennywise. That's unexpected on two fronts because I wasn't expecting any of them to die, and wasn't expecting one to die, not at the hands of, the clown. I honestly think that the opening scene, while I think we could have gotten to that spot better in episode 6, I still stand by that. I think that first 20 minutes to half an hour was probably the strongest storytelling all season. It was just filmed really well, acted really well. It was just, as I said a few minutes ago, it was just really powerful. I do have some, I have some nitpicks, not because nothing's ever perfect. If you think it is, then you have blinders on. I'm sorry. Be it movies or music or wrestling or whatever. If you think something's perfect, blind faith is just as bad as blind hate. It is. I've had this discussion with people who are like AEW zombies who just believe it's just perfect because it's not WWE. So I do have some nitpicks with this episode, but I want to say that me nitpicking little things does not detract from how powerful the first half of this episode was. Like it was very much like a leaning into the screen, just like I was into it for that first 30 minutes. So let's get the, negatives out of the way, just to get them out of the way. And this isn't me saying that the episode sucked because it didn't, but it wasn't a 10 out of 10, beginning to end perfect episode. I think the military stuff, once again, is the downfall of the episode. I still like Halloran. I still think he's the best character all season. We find out what the military is really doing, and I might be in the minority again, and that's fine. But their reasoning is somehow worse than the original one, which was to fight the Russians and fight communism and all that stuff. Like, I don't know. Granted, I know a lot of people are digging what's going on in the military stuff, but it is head and shoulders just the weakest plot. And it's not to say that it's not giving us good characters. Like, Halloran is good. What we're doing with Hanlon is good. And by extension, his family, Charlotte and Will, what's going on with them. So if the military wasn't included, a lot of the plot would be lost. Like, they would have retooled it, obviously, because how, screenwriting works. But I think we just could have done it better. Like, the military stuff better. And I'm waiting for that showdown between Rose and Shaw. I had to look it up. That's my major nitpick, honestly, is what we found out at the end was just like, really? Like, I understand we're going somewhere else with it. 100% get that. But I still think that them doing what they did and just and at the end, when does Pennywise choose when it's going to go to sleep? Because it woke back up once it realized what was going on. So it feeds and hibernates, but we thought it was on a specific cycle. Like, it went away specifically. And they said as much. You know, Halloran said it. The Native Americans said it. Also, the young man who was trapped in the sewers got out. We finally saw him. So yeah, not digging the military stuff still. But as I said earlier, I'm not saying that it made the episode bad. The episode was very good. I just think it was the weakest part of a strong episode. Let's go to my notes and talk about what happened.
Philip's notes.
All right, we open up in 1908, and we have Pennywise the Dancing Clown, the actual one. And we basically see Pennywise pre-Pennywise as we know him. And we see how the entity lured the actual guy into the woods to eat him and take his form because he saw, well, he was in the body of a child that he obviously killed. In that body, we see earlier when Pennywise is doing the performance, the entity is watching from afar and says, "You have a way with children." And then we get to that standoff. We pick up right where we left off as far as that goes from the last episode. I thought it was interesting. These are nitpicks. Anything I say from here on are nitpicks. And I own up to that. When the guys came in with their strangers masks and they were, talking mess and Grogan comes out and the guys are like, "You stupid idiot." The kids were all standing there. Like Will and Ronnie and Rich and Marge were all there. And and granted, I understand when you're wearing a mask, your field of view is lessened. But the one guy saw what I assumed was his daughter way off over to like his left. He didn't see any other kids there. So they're willing to kill a bunch of kids or risk killing a bunch of kids over Grogan? Again, I'm reading too much into that. I 1000% own up to it. It just kind of bothers me. In order to get the kids safe and to get Grogan out of there, Halloran talks to one of the dead, which opens up Pandora's box even more for him, which I thought was, whew, sucks to be him. And it manifested as the episode went on. So then Pennywise shows up. Then while Pennywise is inside, we see Ingrid showing up to the fire as it's going on. And her husband is there trying to get into his car. His car won't start. And he's trying to drive away, is what I meant to say. He's like, "What are you doing? Get back home. I'm going to make you black and blue because it's the 60s and that's what we do." And then it gets his head sliced in half. Like, not decapitated, but like bisected. Just like sliced in half. And Pennywise starts picking it up and eating it. And Ingrid's like, "Daddy, Papa, oh, I've missed you." And he's like, "Do the bow for me." She does the bow. And then they hug and he tells her, I've got to go to sleep now, but I'll be back. I always come back. And then she's all like, "You're not him. You're not my dad." And I'm like, duh. She starts getting upset. And then his head opens up and the deadlights hit and she floats. But we see the deadlights finally, which is cool. I liked that. I know I rag on the CGI. Like, the CGI bisection was kind of eh. But I think the deadlight stuff is cool. I think they do a good job with that. And then, yeah, Rich actually dies. Which, as said, was a gut punch. Wasn't expecting it. And that really sweet moment that him and Marge had after he saved her. But yeah, good thing that I wasn't reacting to it because no one wants to see a old-ass man get emotional. And then I wrote, I hope those assholes find out that they killed a child. Spoiler, I don't think they did. Because the next day they are announcing what happened, including saying that they had gotten Grogan. Because they took his clothes back into the building, the burning building. So it looked like that he burned up with no skeleton. I guess, I don't know. I'm not going to read too much into that. The part of me that wants justice wanted them to know what they did. But, Then we have the Native American meeting. They're back, which is good because they were such an intricate part of the plot as far as Pennywise goes. And they are, again, they're stating what Halloran said to the military guys and, what Pennywise itself said. It's asleep. It's going back to sleep. It's over. And then Halloran leads them to a pillar. And we find out that instead of moving the pillar in to cage it, they want to analyze the pillar. They're going to take it back to the base. And then they indeed take the shard back to the base and they're going to put it in the incinerator. And Hanlon shows up with a gun to stop them. And we basically find out the real plan of the military. This country is fracturing into a million jagged pieces. And I wrote, good. Good. Like, what they want to do is, I don't want to use really strong words, but it's mind control, pretty much, right? There should be marches and whatnot for women's rights. There should be things as far as like racial stuff in America goes. We should not be okay with all this stuff. I know a lot of that mirrors what's going on today. I don't want to get too, socio-political about it. But the worst thing you can do is go numb to it. If the country needs to fracture in order to heal itself in the best way possible, then that's what should happen, including today. Because Shaw says, I'm only trying to prevent another civil war. But the last civil war did something very, very good. So maybe we need to have another one, including nowadays, because the status quo is way too fucking comfortable with what they're doing. I'll leave it at that. So I just think the whole I don't know. Shaw says that fear is an anesthetic. It will, like I said, numb the masses. Because he says, we saw what happened last night with the fire. No one's panicking. No one's rioting. Fear is powerful. He says fear is an anesthetic. And man, I just... So Hanlon tries to stop them again. They put the shard into the incinerator. Pennywise is like in a pool of blood and body parts. And as the thing disintegrates there, and he opens his eyes, and okay, something's going to happen, right? And it does. Phone rings at Will's house. Picks it up. At first it sounds like Ronnie, but it's actually Pennywise. He says, I'm not scared of you. And Pennywise shows up in the kitchen on top of the fridge. Jumps down. Mouth opens up. Dead light starts spinning. Will is... And that's how we end. I like that. And also for my notes, anything else, or from patrons or Patreon, I think you remove the... again, I don't know what's going to happen in the next episode. Obviously, this is setting up, to... Pennywise is going to get free. We need to recage him somehow. Because he's not running rampant over the country in 27 years from now. We know that. And there has to be a showdown between Rose and Shaw. There has to be. I'm still surprised that Rose did not confront him after what, he did to her nephew. Obviously, Pennywise is going to, one would think, wreak havoc in the last episode. Because next week's the last episode. So, again, that's why I think episode 6 could have been tightened up a lot better. Because we have a lot of plot to cover in an hour next week. So... They really can't spend a whole lot of time, really, in my opinion, on anything but Pennywise and what they're doing. But overall, really good episode. Really, really good episode. And it sucks to see Rich go, because I liked him. He was very endearing as a character. Something's going on with Lily. So if she's holding something radioactive, that would explain what's going on. She looks sickly. So overall, this was a strong episode. Very, very intense, especially that first half. Holy crap. And I hope they stick the landing next week. And not only how they deal with Pennywise, but also fighting back. And then how they recage Pennywise. But there's a lot of questions I have about the lore we've learned. And why not do stuff while it's sleeping? That kind of thing. But we're not getting into that now. If you saw Welcome to Derry, Season 1, Episode 7, what did you think? Were you as... heartbroken as I was by it, at least the first half. So, we'll wrap this one up. As always, I don't have a fancy outro, so I will simply say thank you for watching, and I will see you next week for this final episode of Welcome to Derry, Season 1. Until then, goodbye.